Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. And between the years 1990 and 2000, I did hundreds of interviews with musicians for the Irish Times in a slot that was originally called the Joe Jackson Interview. When Paddy Woodworth, the newspaper's arts editor, launched its now legendary Sound and Vision double-page spread. The name above the title idea was his. And I once said to Paddy, "Why me, Lord?" I was joking, though editors do like to be addressed that way. Paddy explained that he chose me primarily because we both believed that the arts should be central to political debate rather than relegated to the sidelines, and that as such, popular music, as an outgrowth of popular culture, could and should be explored from a socio-political perspective. Either way, that slot, which if only because it was a 3/4 page spread in the Irish Times, became much sought after, and it could help sell out a gig, or so Tony Bennett once told me. And that to me was the added bonus, especially as someone who became an interviewer to meet my music heroes. I now had access to virtually any musician I wanted to interview, including longtime heroes such as Bennett, Ray Charles and Joni Mitchell. And even if all I got was a phone interview, something I usually rejected because it didn't lend itself to in-depth discussion, I was happy to say, "You bet." What follows is one of my Irish Times interviews. Enjoy.
I see that game last night. Did you see the French game last night?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, good game, mate.
Yeah? I was at a party. So the first one's for the Irish Times.
Right.
And you haven't talked for a long time to the Irish press.
Right.
Okay.
Nothing personal.
I know, good. No, I know that. In actual fact, I'm going to try just to give it an Irish tilt on the first question.
What?
I saw that you kind of, you once, on your new album, There's No Drinking After You're Dead, you've described as a song, a kind of drinking song you want to be like something Behan might have sung.
Right.
And I also saw on one of the internet sites that the nadir of your career was miming to Bono on Top of the Pops. Remember that? And the other thing is, you also...
I already call it that, but yeah.
Was it? No, it wouldn't. It's kind of gross exaggeration. But the other thing was, you also said, I never aspired to anything as meaningless as being as big as you two,
right.
In one quote. The Irish connection, is it in the blood? Is it just a kind of one small reference point?
Ooh.
Like even up to the song on the album?
Well, it's just a reference point. I don't know if it goes any further than that. I've got some Welsh in me. I don't know if that sort of counts.
No, not really. No, we don't buy that one. And there's no Irishry?
No, well, not to my knowledge.
All right. And even the Behan connection, would that be just kind of true? How would you know of Behan? Would you have read his work?
I read Borstal Boy.
Did you?
Yeah, it was a great book.
Yeah, heavy stuff. Very kind of realistic view of what it was like. My dad was sent away to one of those places, so he told me it was absolutely spot on.
Right.
You know? So that kind of stuff. But the song you wanted was just that kind of where people would have a few drinks and sing. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, and that kind of fatalism in the idea of the song, but a kind of fuck it. You know, at the end of the day, the ultimate conclusion is fuck it. Just have a drink and get on with it.
All right.
I suppose that's what I kind of meant by it. But when I first started the song off, it was kind of more, almost more folky, really.
Right.
More acoustic and.
Right. But it is that kind of. We're all going to die anyway, so let's dance till then.
Yeah, sort of.
Let's sing and dance until we get there. And anyway, drinking heavily is not necessarily the ownership of the Irish.
Certainly not. No, you find that in most cultures, I guess, really.
But we have that stereotype. But the Irish have that stereotype. It's almost like a stereotype in
we do like a drink. It has to be said, doesn't it?
Oh, we do, yeah, very much so. Okay. I know you don't want this. I was looking at on the new album. There's kind of like there's a song for Leah, which is your daughter. Right. And I know you don't like songs reduced to just autobiography.
Right.
But there's a feel on the new album of a man who is more at peace and more trying to celebrate light than the last album. Yeah. It's almost like you're saying there are things, apart from even like celebrate dancing and drinking, it's like celebrate your daughter, celebrate a new relationship.
Yeah.
Now, I know you do hate stuff being reduced to just biography, don't you?
Well, only because because it reduces the song, for the listener as well. And I think, especially when I think back when I was a kid, and all the songs I used to hear then, kind of took on their own meanings. I put in my own meaning into them, or took on their own relevance, really, my own mind. And I think it's important to keep that in music, And
what would you have put some songs we would know that you would go, I know what he meant. It doesn't matter what he meant. I know what I meant.
Strawberry Fields Forever for me,
All right.
When John sings "No One Else Is in My Tree," as a kid, I just thought, well, yeah, I feel like that as well.
Like removed from whatever else
Yeah.
is going on around you. But you didn't need to know his biography to know he really
No.
felt he was looking at his Aunt Mimi's window.
No, it's enough for him.
You know
to
what I
write.
mean?
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
enough for him that he's written the song, and I get something what I need to get from it.
All right. But the new album is very much, wasn't it, your attempt to undo the darkness, or not undo the darkness, but balance the darkness of the last album?
Yeah, just to make something with light and air and colour in it, really. You know, quite the contrast to what Heavy Soul was, really.
Yeah, yeah. But Heavy Soul itself was reflecting changes you'd gone through in terms of a marriage, in terms of stuff like that.
Yeah, I think
you'd
any
looked
album
at that.
does. I think all records do that, you know, and all the songs you write at a particular time, you know. And I think there's also the thing where a song starts off and you kind of, or I kind of base it on how I feel at the time or what I'm trying to put over.
Mm-hmm.
Initially anyway, and then also, but beyond that, you kind of try and take the song out, and you know the rest is kind of writing as well in a different way. You know, you're trying to finish the song off and also expand it as well. You know, it couldn't all just be me.
Yeah.
I just think it'd be boring if nothing else.
All right. So the evolution of a song dictates that it goes outwards.
Yeah,
It becomes more universal.
yeah, because you want to get across to other people as well, I think.
And would you ever have pulled back a song because you thought, no, I don't want to reveal this much about myself?
No,
No? There's never that element of...
no, because I think no, I wouldn't know. I think, you know, a song kind of takes on its own life as well up to a point.
But in something like Frightened, you talk about... It's not... I think I've seen you describe it looking at the other side of being macho. Did you ever feel like, I don't want to reveal a vulnerable side? Which you do on these songs and in some songs.
Well,
do you ever draw back from that? Like the tough nut image you have, going back to whenever.
Yeah, well, I think that's more kind of bound up in that time, you know. I mean, I think
Right.
I would have been... I probably wouldn't have liked to see myself as being that vulnerable in the Jam days when I was a
Okay.
teenager or young guy, but...
Why though? Why? What would it have been? Because it was just an image you had to live up to?
Well,
Or
it's
it was
just
the
the way
days
you
of
are.
punk?
But I think I think it's beyond that. I think it's just the way
Right.
you are when you're a kid, isn't it? You know,
All right.
you have to have that kind of bluff and bluster
Yeah,
to get by in a way.
Yeah.
But I think whether it's you kind of more relaxed around yourself when you're older, or I don't know, or more confident, or give less of a fuck what people think.
Right.
You know, you don't mind sort of showing the soft underbelly.
Sure. But would you also have seen the macho side as maybe counterproductive in relationships with women, with friends?
I think it
That-
still
that'd be-
is. I still
yeah,
think there's that element
yeah.
to it. You know, I think probably for most men, really.
Trying to deal with that and not let it become a corrosive kind of...
Yeah, I just think. Well, it's destructive as well,
Yeah.
ultimately, isn't it? But I suppose, you know, it's getting a balance. Like a lot of things in life, is finding a balance in life, isn't it? And that's always the hardest part, isn't it?
But you didn't... That wasn't the conceptual idea behind Frightened, was it? Or
No.
something softer like Loveless, so that you're not kind of saying, I really want to unveil myself here.
Nah, I'm just writing a song.
Yeah? With not a concept behind it.
Well, the concept's in the song, but it's not
Right.
an overall album concept, or you know.
Right, right. And you don't... It's not a kind of mathematical thing you set out in advance.
No.
Well, tell me something about the song Loveless then.
Well, I think for me it was writing about God, or
Okay.
the kind of conception I got about God,
All right.
and the kind of need at that time. I can't think when I wrote it now. I was trying to cast my mind back, but it was
Like
probably,
a couple of years ago rather
probably
than
a couple
long
of years
time
ago.
Yeah, yeah.
But to feel, I felt a need to sort of be plugged into something, to be connected to something, and I suppose it's kind of loosely a sort of God as a concept. I know, you know, it's always hard talking about God because I know,
Well, then you see that you're almost cutting it out. You know, we went into John Lennon's line, didn't you?
I knew you
God
did
is a
that, yeah.
concept by which you measure our pain. Well, I do hear. I mean, I know you said this album was an attempt, and we can
Perhaps
talk
God's
about
also
that.
a concept to measure our joy as well as
That's
pain.
true. Yeah. Well, Lennon was going through his primal therapy, so I think he was only thinking of the pain.
Right.
But that idea, and I know you say this album you tried to just transcend your earlier influences, but I still hear
Right.
echoes of that. And there's a Lennon-esque feel to Frightened. It could be like
Right.
of the Jealous Guy time.
Yeah, yeah.
And the
for
Primal
real, yeah.
album
Yeah,
and
sure.
Loveless. But did you feel there was a kind of spiritual void in your life?
I probably did at that time, yeah.
Aye.
I mean, it's hard for me to kind of relate back to it now because I can't even remember what frame of mind I was in when I wrote this song, to be honest with
Okay. All right.
you.
But it's a lovely feel to it, and it is a kind of questioning hunger, a different kind of hunger than your political hunger with the Jam or whatever.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
It's an evolution of that.
yeah, well, it's over 20 years down the line as well.
That's true.
You know, people forget that.
But you also said in the opening song about Ronnie Lane that he had this core blimey image, but that what you really liked about him was that he too had a spiritual nature.
was
He
still
had
a seeker,
spiritual, yeah, and he had that element. Was that what you identified with?
I do
in his
identify
work?
very much with that, yeah. And I don't think it's just the property of intellectuals or you know, and going to the right schools and all that crap.
So we were talking earlier about the macho thing, and it can be very much kind of working class. We're not supposed to use words like spiritual quest.
Right.
Yeah, it almost catches on my tongue.
Right.
And then you do realise it's not just, as you say, the prerogative of
No,
whoever.
it's for everyone, yeah. And I think the same thing about art as well.
Right.
You know, talking about music as art and as culture, you know, I don't really have a problem with that either anymore. And I think it's, you know.
But did you ever? Like, see music as a reflection of culture and art?
No, I probably always felt it. I don't know, it might have just caught in my throat saying it at certain times in the past. But I don't know. No, I just think it is, you know, it's a massive part of our culture as well, of working class culture, post-war culture.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
And still is, you know, I think. I mean, it goes through peaks and troughs and stuff, but essentially it'll always be that way, I think, and it'll always be important to people's lives.
Well, it's how we defined ourselves. I saw a great exhibition in the War Museum here last time I was over in London. It just said from the bomb to the Beatles.
Right.
And it was like, you just saw a huge picture of Hiroshima. What was really moving about it was a mug that was melted on the day.
Right.
Talking about reality. And then went right around to, you know, Beatles wallpaper, a mini from the Italian Job.
Right.
And you just go, this is really the culture that people have lived,
Right,
particularly working class people. And the same in Dublin or wherever, you know, in the so-called British Isles.
Right.
So that very much is how you shaped yourself, by be it the Beatles or listening to early. I know you listen to a lot of
or
soul,
it shaped
though.
me, you know what I mean, whichever way you look at it, you know.
All right. But you adopted...
But I'm a product of that culture, and I'm proud of it as well. You know, it's not like it's a good thing. It's a positive thing.
And it's your family background, is it? Like your mum and dad would have loved the same, would have listened to Sinatra or Cole or whoever?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So
and
that
my mum would have bought the early Beatle records, and
all right.
so I would have grown up in a house of with music anyway. You know what I mean?
All right. And where the interest in the kind of well-structured rock song or pop song? You know, the interest in the craft, which has always been central to you.
Probably through my influences. Through, you know, Ray Davis and Lennon,
All right.
Smokey, you know, whoever it may be. Through, but to say studied, I don't know. I mean,
okay. It's more you absorb.
Yeah, I mean, because I haven't got the one. I couldn't be bothered to study it in that sort of sense, and two, I wouldn't have the technical expertise to do that, you know. And also, there's people I mentioned. Probably a lot of them I shouldn't really speak for them, but probably a lot of them wouldn't know what they're doing necessarily anyway. It's just a gift and it just comes.
All right.
But
Like they didn't have to go to college to learn the art of songwriting.
I don't agree with anyone. You know, that's the whole thing that you can teach people how to write or teach people how to play music. I mean, it might be different in the classical world where you have to read dots and dashes. But it's like jazz schools. I mean, how can you teach someone to play jazz? I don't understand, you know.
All right. But you were saying earlier you would have got that line, you would have hooked in emotionally to Nobody's in My Tree.
Right.
But then when you became a songwriter, would you have started to take down the lyrics and the melody and the chords and said, now I see how they do it? Lennon and McCartney, Ray Davis, whoever. Like that kind of approach.
I would have tried to, well, I mean, but from the point of view that I would have, from the angle that I would just be playing them myself, I'd just be trying to play those songs on an acoustic guitar, or we'd have done cover versions when we were starting out.
Yeah.
And getting the chords wrong as well, and we're simplifying them, oversimplifying them, you know, reducing them to 3 or 4 chords. And
okay, all right. But
that
was
not,
yeah, go on, sorry.
Not studied, I wouldn't say, more just naturally absorbed. I don't know.
And with the Jam, it would have been everybody's influences. It wasn't just what you were bringing on board. Everybody had a different set of tastes.
In the band, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we'd have taken them all on board.
That each person was bringing along.
I mean, when we first met him, he was the drummer.
Yeah.
Was a big, not necessarily heavy metal, but it was a big Zepp fan and Black Sabbath. So I mean, I wouldn't have really taken that on board, you know.
Yeah, so you would have run a mile from that
I was the captain of the ship, you know what I mean? And then, I don't know if it's always good to designate, really.
All right, I like to take that try and to designate, to let them kind of have an equal power or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. But also, you know, and also I think the fact if you've got one sole writer in the band,
right,
I think that one person sort of does decide which way you go and decides on the direction and what we're doing musically and how we look. And
right. You think that's healthier than fragment people pulling in all different directions?
I think it all depends on, you know, who you're working with and what kind of influence you all bring to the table, really. I think if they're all really good influences, then I think, you know, democracy is probably great in a certain bands. I can't think of any examples, but I mean,
where democracy.
Yeah, because I don't, you know, I can't think of an example to give really. I mean, I was going to say the Beatles, but then but still John and Paul kind of at the helm, wasn't it?
Yeah,
you know?
And even they were at war with each other a lot of the time too. Yeah. You know what I mean? So there was that. You could say U2, but then maybe you could say that Adam and Larry are edged out.
Right.
And it's Bono and The Edge.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it is a trick, and it also is, I mean, I don't know, you know an Irish group like the Chieftains?
Yeah.
I just went on tour with them in America. They're 38 years playing together. And I don't know, actually.
What, the same guys?
Yeah. And you're kind of going, how the fuck do they do that without killing each other?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And one way
Have you
they
asked
do
them?
I did ask them, yeah. And I stayed with them. They actually they stay in different floor and hotel rooms. They don't talk to each other.
Just
they don't
turn
have
up.
breakfast together. They go on stage together and they play. But it's
right.
not that they're enemies. That's their strategy for still making it exciting when they get out on stage.
Right,
You know what I mean?
Right, right.
But it did end acrimoniously with you and the Jam, didn't it? I mean, has that all been resolved in time? Do you guys meet or do you talk? Or
No,
is it
we
just,
don't really. I mean,
Alright.
and it. I don't know if it ever will get resolved because,
Alright.
you know, they took us to court about 5 years ago. So that kind of, you know, those things kind of get in the way of
Who did? The others took you to court?
Right.
Okay, for what? Copyright money?
No, nothing like that. Enough because nothing comes through me like that. But
Oh, okay.
but I don't know. It's worth going into really. But it
All right,
wasn't
fair enough,
not for
yeah.
always, but.
But you don't feel it can be resolved?
No, I don't. But and also I think, you know, I never saw us as being that big buddies anyway at the time.
All right.
We come from a small town, and therefore you only got a small choice of musicians in the town. You know.
Okay, which is where? It's somewhere near here, is it? Just
10
down the back
minutes
down the
down the
road,
road
isn't
down
it?
here.
Woking, is it? What
Woking.
is it? Woking, yeah,
Woking.
okay. Woking.
But so you kind of, you know, you kind of sort of stuck with who you can get in a sense. You know, I mean, I
Okay.
don't know, it sounded like a bit of a put down, but that's kind of fact how it was anyway. And
Sure.
so it wouldn't have been like I would have necessarily gone out and socialised with them guys anyway.
Okay, all right. But did you feel musically limited? Because then when you redefined yourself, and the many times you did, which I think is great, and I'm reading all the stuff about you, either fans or the press have a problem.
Right.
With, you go from A to B to C. What is their problem with that?
I don't know.
You know, but do you let that bug you? Did
It
you
does
ever?
bug me, yeah,
You know the
but
way they
I've
say
kinda
you
got
shouldn't
over
go
it.
from here to Style Council, you can't go from Style Council to this, and you're going, why can't he? Bob Dylan changes himself every time he turns around. David Bowie does. You know what I mean? Does it still get to you though, even at this stage?
Less so these days.
Yeah.
It did even up to a couple of years ago. It did.
Like the last album.
On not the last album, but
Okay.
Heavy Soul, or before that, or Stanley Road. But you know, it's also this thing in this country where people also like the underdog as well.
Right.
It's like in the early '90s when I was kind of clawing my way back up again. There's a few sort of positive noises from the press, and then once I sort of got there, by the time of Wildwood or Stanley Road, which done really well,
Yeah.
it was kind of tables were turned and eyes were drawn again, you know. So there's always that element in the English press, I think.
All right, but you also phoned up and called out a reviewer in the NME, didn't you?
Yeah, which is probably I shouldn't have done really, but you know, fuck it.
Which shows you care.
I do care, yeah.
But was it a really? I didn't read it, but
I
was it a
didn't like
really
it.
cheap or negative review
The
or
thing
what?
I didn't like was that it kind of intimated that that was a contractual album, that I just kind of made this
right,
album
okay.
for a
To meet-
contract, which I'd never do. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Music means too much to me just to fulfil a fucking contract, you know.
All right. Okay.
And that's what rankled me more than anything else.
Just that angle that it was manufactured to
Yeah.
some degree to get you off a hook.
Yeah, which I'd never done.
But that's not you. I would
No, I
never
never
have
make
sensed
music
that
like
about your work.
But
And you have very much said that kind of almost you define yourself too much by your music, that you wish you could kind of, I mean, you say that somewhere, self-definition, it's like, I wish I could just take myself out of that.
Right.
And instead of defining myself by the next song or the next album, in another way, maybe with family, maybe with girlfriend, lover, or whoever, is that still a drive, you know, that music is that central that you wish it wasn't?
Yeah, sometimes it is, yeah. But I think it's kind of difficult because I think if you want to do it 100%,
Right.
then it's kind of you have to give something up to do that as well.
All right.
And the times when I haven't given 100%, it's kind of shown in the music, I think. You know, this is all in hindsight.
Okay. And when would you feel you didn't like which albums? In the solo work even? Like you listen back to one of the albums and you go, I wasn't there all the way.
On some of them, yeah, Heavy Soul, for instance.
Right. A couple of tracks.
There's at least three tracks which are real turkeys for me. You know, just,
But when did you realise that? Like, was it a year later or 2 years later? Or
I had a bad feeling about them at the time, but it's at the
Okay.
same time, it's kind of, you know, there's like one song in particular, Driving Nowhere on Heavy Soul,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
I've taken nearly 2 years of trying to finish that song.
Right,
And I
right.
kept thinking, there's something here. I mean,
Okay.
in the end, there wasn't anything there. But I
Okay.
spent 2 years doing it, so it's
All right,
like, well,
all
I'm
right.
still going to commit to this.
Who would you go to anybody as musical advisor or something, a buddy or a companion and say, just give me a break on this, listen to it and tell me, am I right or am I wrong? You know what I mean?
I would probably just do that with the people around me, really.
Yeah, okay. People who are
With-
close to you as
well,
opposed to music
I mean,
industry.
the producer,
All right,
the
okay.
co-producer, or
All right.
Steve White, the
Yeah.
drummer,
Yeah,
people I'm working with at the time, really.
right.
Who
And
are
would
all-
Steve never have said, Paul, this is wrong, this ain't working?
Well, it'd be the same thing. He'd probably feel the same way, that there's something good here, but
Okay.
it ain't 100%.
All right.
and doesn't know how to get to it. He's not a writer, you know. And it's just
All right. Okay.
you either make decisions either where we ditch it or we continue with it, and you know whatever happens.
All right. But Steve is very important to the music you've played.
Totally, yeah.
Isn't he that kind of jazz bass? And you've said
Yeah.
that kind of the Afro-American thing always hooked you.
Yeah,
Wasn't that kind of like
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
central thing?
Still
You know,
is,
when you
yeah.
say those times that you didn't give 100%, did you ever feel that giving 100% to music damaged your personal life?
yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it works both
Because
ways,
it
yeah.
eats you up,
yeah, totally.
and you
yeah.
are totally focused.
I think, which looking back which is only a few short years ago, but a real peak for me was probably around Wildwood and
Right.
Stanley Road for me
Right.
personally, you know, creatively and professionally or whatever you want to call it.
Right, right.
And I think I lost a lot of things around that time as well in my own personal life, you know, like my marriage split
Yeah.
up and all, you know.
But was that a consequence of the you becoming that successful and you going for tours and doing the whole kind of...
I think it's just, you know, to give that kind of full commitment to the music, which I was at that time,
Okay.
110%, I think someone else is going to miss out and someone else
All
is
right.
going to lose out, you know.
All right,
And I
all
think it's
right.
inevitable, and I think it works either way, you know.
Okay.
And there's always that thing for me. It's like, how much do I put into this thing? You know, I love both of these things here, and how am I going to split it up? You know,
Yeah.
it's very hard to do a fucking tightrope
Of course it is.
walk. You know,
But isn't that a question that's, we were talking about art or music on all levels. You look through I just did 50 documentaries on the greatest artists of the 20th century, from Louis Armstrong right through to whoever.
Right.
And people kept coming back to me and saying, how come they never got the balance between art and love, or art and wife or husband and
Well, I
children
think it's
right?
really,
More
really-
often they don't,
yeah, well, it's very difficult to do,
isn't
I
it?
think.
To get that kind of, to get it right.
Yeah.
But even
Something
though,
must suffer somewhere, I think.
but you, I know your marriage fell apart, but you still stay in touch with your children and you have other
Yeah,
children.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
didn't lose at that level.
No, and if anything, it's got better in recent years as well.
Okay, with the children from yeah.
Yeah, and also with kids from my 2 kids from my marriage as well.
All right. Okay. So you're getting a balance at that level now.
Yeah,
But I mean, Heavy Soul reflects a time where you went a little bit crazy too, doesn't it? After the breakup and that,
Yeah.
indulgent and stuff like that, whatever it is, maybe drink we were talking about, or drugs or whatever.
yeah,
Okay, and you've got a balance on that, have you?
yeah.
At this stage,
At this stage, yeah.
is that
Yes, I have, Doctor.
okay? No, but I find the new I do find the new album very celebratory. I mean, I'm in a lucky position of having just fallen in love, so it's great for me. So I can listen to it and I hear what you're celebrating. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
But and also with the new album, there's also a question we wanted to get to a point in my mind as well that I think, well, that'd be a nice place to get to musically, and it'd be a nice thing to deliver to the world, that you can
Right.
listen to this piece of plastic or whatever this fucking CD these days,
Yeah.
and get something from it, get the same feeling that I'm trying to get to attain, you know, which is a joyful feeling, you know, and a world of colour
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not misery.
Yeah, it is a world of colour though, isn't it? It's colour and light,
Yeah.
even the design. And do you feel there's any turkeys on that?
No, I don't.
Good. All right. So
don't.
you listen to it still. What?
Well, I don't know if I listen to it because I've been playing it for like the last 6 weeks on tour, but you know.
Oh yeah.
but
Okay.
I'm proud
All
of
right.
it anyway.
What's been the overall response? I haven't to critical and public and fan. You know. I know it's only released in the States coming up.
I don't think it's even been released in the States.
No, so I saw an advert on Amazon saying pre-order now,
Right,
12th of
right.
July or something.
Oh, okay,
Maybe right. So what has been?
It's been really good. I mean, I can only gauge it on. I mean, the press reviews have been good for what they're worth. You know, which don't mean an awful lot to me.
All right. But
And
do you
I've
still
tried
have that
this time.
resistance?
Well, I've tried this time to avoid reading them as well because I
Okay.
think there's a thing I've read about Richard Burton said that, you know, they're either, if they're a good review, it's never good enough, and if it's a bad review, you're just brought down for a few days or weeks on end.
Okay.
So he just
Okay.
always avoided reading any of his notices.
All right. Okay.
So I kind of sort of followed that a little bit, but I gauge it more on at gigs. You know, we've done 27 gigs recently over here, and just talking to people afterwards or before the gig or whatever, and just very positive. You know, a lot of people really liked it. Hardcore fans who've been
Yeah.
there for years, and
Yeah.
you know, young cats who come as well. And I don't know. I think that's the best sort of, you know, the best
Getting
kind
the
of gauge.
best way to gauge it. But why do you give so few interviews? I mean, what is that? Is it still smarting
Well, I've done a few. I've done a few, you know, I'm just selective. You know.
Yeah. Why?
I mean-
Because it feels like bullshit to you, or,
Well,
or
I just don't want
needless?
to be plastered over everyone's front page. You know.
Okay. All
and I
right.
don't want to do you know, speak to, you know, Gardeners Weekly to the Melody Maker to, you know, Train Spotters. I mean, I just think, you know.
But have you been burned? Was there something I missed? Was there a quote you gave that
it's
were
not at
really...
all. But I mean,
okay.
I've done shitloads of press in the past. I mean, you know,
All right.
the Jam we did loads. With Style Cats we did even more, probably
Yeah,
too
yeah.
much. And I just think it's better just to do 1 or 2 interviews every time, you know.
All right.
Rather than,
All
I mean,
right.
it's also you give the same interviews almost every time.
Sure enough.
It's no one's
Yeah.
fault. It's inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you've got an album out and you're going to be asked pretty much the same questions, and you're going to have to give the same answers unless you're going to try and make something up every time.
Is it true you check out journalists?
Not in a big way. I haven't checked you out, man.
Thank you. All right. No, but you did do that. That to me makes sense. I mean, because I've been on the other
I like
side.
to see what they've written or if they're good writers or not.
All right. To see if there's some kind of affinity.
I don't check them out in a big way. It's not that I'll get their personal data.
Or an FBI file or somebody outside their window. And what about you're playing the Witness gig? This is obviously part of why I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
I mean, is that kind of huge venue, that huge gig, is that exciting to you, or does it seem like a little bit oppressive, or what? Are you looking forward to something like that? It's a huge audience. It's the biggest thing in Ireland this year.
I haven't done it before.
Right.
I've done festivals over there. I've done Dublin and Galway before, but it's a different.
It is huge.
Before.
Yeah. It's a 2-day. I don't know what the figures are, but I talked to David Gray about it, and he said he's just terrified by the size of the crowd because he thought it was like a weekend. Couple of stages,
kind of used to it about being blasé, but
all right. And do you think
I get nervous wherever I play, man? If I was going to go and play a club gig now and to 200 people, I'd be as nervous as playing at 200,000.
Do you still get that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But what is it though? Fear that it won't go right?
Just that every time you've got, how many times you do it, you've got to go back and prove yourself every time.
Do you feel that every time you face that audience, no matter how small?
Yeah, you're only as good as your last gig and your last record, as far as I'm concerned.
Do you feel that?
Yeah.
Does that
That's what gives me the edge, and some other people, don't.
You're never going to get complacent.
I wouldn't have thought so. No, I think I'll get. There's too much at stake to get complacent in a way.
Within music.
Yeah, within myself, what I'm trying to get to, what I'm trying to prove, what I'm trying to give out.
But that is part of the fire, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the worst music in the world is made by people who become flabby.
Well, the thing is, right, if you walked up those steps, wherever the gig may be, every time, and you were nonchalant about it, and just like, well, just another gig, let's get on and do it, then I think something's got to suffer really, or something would be missing from it all.
All right, but does that kind of internal drive for yourself ever lead to dry periods when you're writing? You just go, fuck it.
It does.
Because you keep trying to top yourself, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that gets harder.
I don't mean top yourself, kill yourself, but you get better,
Yeah,
So have you ever hit a period where it's like 3 months, 6 months, I can't even pick up the guitar, let alone write a song?
Yeah, almost every fucking year, yeah.
Do you? You get that kind of period, do you?
Yeah, I do. And then I'll go for a period of time and I might write 6 songs in a week, or, well, exaggerating, but, a month or something. But I've always had those periods, yeah. And I think it gets harder and harder. The more records you make and the more ground you cover, the harder it's going to get. Without repeating the same things, using the same imagery, the same chord sequences.
Yeah, that is the challenge, isn't it?
It is a challenge, yeah, and I find that gets harder and harder,
Because when it's like 20 years or whatever.
I mean, it's like even people that I respect. I'm not a massive fan, but I respect and admire them. People like Neil Young or Van Morrison, who've got a good 15 years on me, are still good artists, and they're still, every now and again you'll hear a great track from them. But they basically made the same album for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as a put down. It's just I don't see any way around that in some ways. I would defy anyone to sort of come up with something brand new every single time.
Well, it's almost like Van has given into that since Avalon Sunset, certainly, and around that time, it's almost like here's part 7.
Yeah, well, but then I wouldn't put the man down for it because I can kind of see how that happens, and I think also they carve out something, and you either like it, and it's always there for you. Or if you don't like it, then you don't bother with it,
All right.
But I don't think they're there necessarily to be groundbreaking, and I think you do your groundbreaking in your youth, really, as well. I think tip me hat off to any man who can still break groundbreak at 40 or 50, And
what about Dylan, though, coming up to 60 and Time Out of Mind? Do you not think he went for something different there?
Was that the last acoustic thing?
No, the one about the real dark, bluesy.
The last album he did?
Yeah, about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
With Daniel Lanois. No?
Yeah,
you don't think
didn't do it for me, man? But
did not do it for you?
But another person obviously respect. You know what I mean?
Right.
Obviously.
Okay. So do you know
and there's echoes of his first album on it as well, isn't there? It's almost coming full
circle.
There is,
yeah, yeah. It is that. Well, he had that heart thing. Remember when he thought he was going to die? So I'm pretty sure it was almost like an attempt to close a circle or something.
Right.
He never talks about it that way. But would you see any jazz artists or anyone that you could turn on their album and go, they were still like Coltrane, Parker, or anyone?
Yeah, I thought Coltrane was great up until the time he died, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was still cutting edge.
But how was he? He was only, in his 30s?
Well, that's right. What about Miles, though? Do you think Miles still did it? Wasn't he? He was still trying to break new ground, electronically and going into electric funk. Yeah. You know what I mean? Right up to the end.
I do, yeah.
So would you ever, and who would you turn to, and I'm wrapping up the interview, who would you turn to in terms of just to ease that kind of feeling that I got to get better and go, they still did it, I can match that.
Well, I can't think, it's hard to find examples really.
All right. Okay.
But I mean, that is that is what I'm after as well. Obviously, to try and come up with something different. It's just looking inside yourself to see what else is new in there. And I think it's also easier with, obviously, when you're younger, every experience comes quicker,
Right.
and they're much bigger explosion when they happen as well. And those things slow down, don't they? They still happen when you get older, but they slow down.
Yeah. But there's also the other question, which relates to what I was saying about that series on the great artists. If you become complacent, if you become happy in love, it's almost like the greatest paintings, poems, novels have all been written out of heartbreak and breakup.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you get, how many times can you tell the world you love the person you're with?
Yeah.
Or indeed you love your children. I like the idea that you're brave enough to say, Sweet Pea. It's like, I love my daughter, and this is the song. But you can't. I don't know if you can do that again.
No, you couldn't do it.
You know what I mean?
It'd be ridiculous, man. Yeah, of course you couldn't. No.
But you're not going to force heartbreak into your life again just to get another good album.
No, I'm not.
But some people would do that, and that there are artists who skirt that edge.
Yeah, and I've done that up to a point in the past as well, but it's not a place I'd like to go back to. And I think...
What, let relationships go over just so you could explore it and write about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I've kind of done close to that in the past, and I don't think that's... There must be other ways to make music without having to go through that bullshit. I'll put the other bullshit onto other people, more importantly, really.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Because didn't Steve say that about one of the tracks on this album, about kind of, he heard it, maybe it was Frightened, like, what am I putting my family into? What am I going over?
Right.
Wasn't that idea? And I think that's where people stop. It can be great. It's great for yourself if you're a solo artist and you're the only one who pays the dues.
Yeah.
But if there's a wife, lover, boyfriend, children,
yeah, and they got to suffer.
They got to suffer so you can get a better song. It becomes a pretty savage circle.
Yeah. And I'm not entirely sort of convinced by the whole process anyway.
Which?
To do that, to put yourself through that or other people through that, just to get a good song out of it. There must be other ways to make music as well,
Yeah.
I don't know what at the moment, but I'm looking at that.
All right. Okay.
We're looking into that.
Okay, I'm happy with that for the Irish Times interview. Unless you think there was anything you'd like me to ask about. Okay, give me a little bit on with Time and Temperance, because I think that and the kind of like the balance between that and the kind of Back in the Fire, it harks back to Jam kind of political unrest, and Time and Temperance is something else.
Time and Temperance, I suppose, is kind of me singing to my ex-wife in a way.
Okay.
I guess,
It's a kind of gentle, it's a good message to be sending back, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Has she responded?
She hasn't, no.
Oh, has she not? Okay. But that is what it's about, isn't it? Like moving out of the shadows of a dead love or whatever.
Yeah, and moving on.
And moving on.
Yeah.
And like, we have to. And you have to.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of song of peace for you, to a degree, and to her.
I guess so, in some ways to make amends in some ways, or a kind of clearing something out the way, and let's, start again fresh.
Would she have been one of the persons who suffered because of the process we've just been talking about? You allowing things to go so far so you could just explore the shadows?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
So this is kind of like a coda on that process.
Yeah.
As much as a song can be.
As much as a song can be, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And Back in the Fire?
Back in the Fire is just was really about the way that there's a really sort of way that people are just used up. It's like you've worked all your life, paid all your taxes, paid your insurance, and you're still thrown back on the fucking slag heap at the end of the day.
All right.
And the faceless, chinless wonders who still control everything,
Okay.
What were once called the establishment and what they're called these days, but they still remain the same thing.
All right. But you avoid that by being a musician, don't you? You and I could have become welders or metalers or something and be on that scrap heap.
Yeah. Doesn't mean I haven't got a view on it though. I should put a view forward on it.
Yeah,
I come from the background, the working class background. I feel I've got every right to sort of say what I want on it.
Sure. And also you can feel like the music business fucks you on the scrap heap.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? I know you're right about that. I don't want to go into that.
I could have got arrested fucking 10 years ago, man.
Yeah.
Once when I left Polydor, I got dropped by Polydor.
Yeah. Nobody wanted to hear what you wanted to do.
No, it doesn't matter how many millions you've made, people generated. It means fuck all to them.
And how does that leave you now, looking to the future in terms of loyalty to the music industry or loyalty?
Well, I have no loyalty to them.
Okay.
They just. Right. I mean, I'm not. I don't think I'm bitter and twisted about it. I'm just realistic and practical about it these days. And it taught me a good lesson, and one worth learning.
All right. But do you control, do you record your stuff here and distribute it through a record label, so you're more in control than you might have?
No, I'm just signed direct.
You're signed direct?
Yeah. I mean, they don't interfere in what I record.
Do they not?
I'll give them the final thing.
But there's no imposition in terms of the music or anything of that along the way.
No.
You give them the final product.
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, I've also been in strong positions in the past, and they still refuse to put a record out. So, I'm kind of always,
aware
of that.
All right, but you're not. I mean, you still have a faith in what you do, and a faith in as much as you can do within those parameters.
Yeah, and my faith is back to not every time I play, but a lot of times when I play live, I've seen magic. It's not just an abstract idea. Magic, it actually exists, and I've seen it.
All right, like feedback from an audience.
At a gig, let alone it's one little gig in the whole universe, but you can see pure magic in the air and feel it. So it's a good enough.
As in the way you connect with an audience.
Yeah, and just the way everyone's just not risen, what's the word? Rises above everything. Transcends it.
Yeah. So that's kind of like, but that's the other side. You were saying earlier, I go in every time saying I got to prove myself.
Yeah.
But the up on all that is one of those times you will get that magic.
Yeah.
And you will bring the audience with, and you will go with it too.
I mean, we did, like I just said, we did 27 gigs recently, and if I was really, I mean, they were all good, but probably out of all those 27, I liked 7 or 8 of them were real special. Were just what we're talking about.
Okay.
And it only needs 7 or 8 of those, or one of those, to make you feel this is all worthwhile. And I've got complete faith in what we're doing here and what's going on here.
All right, okay. I hope
if you didn't get any of those at all, then it would matter. But
it would be spiritually depleting.
Yeah,
wouldn't it be? Just wasting.
Yeah, of course.
And especially then it's going to corrode the music because you're just going through motions of doing songs and not getting that energy back.
Yeah.
Well, I hope the Witness gig is that kind of gig for you.
So do I, man. Yeah.
Okay.
I always hope that all of them are. They can't always be.
They can't. No. But something like this, I think, is going to be really special. And I think it just may be. So I wish.
Who else is playing there?
Oh God, there's about 35 acts. It's David Gray. It's kind of like Therapy.
He's big over there, isn't he?
It's huge, man. It's kind of like unbelievable.
He's not Irish though.
No. He's an adopted Irish man. I mean, his record is so phenomenally. I think it's.
He could be though. He almost sounds it in his voice.
He
sometimes.
does, yeah. And he has that narrative style to his songs and the guitar and the Dylan-esque, Van-esque influences. You know what I mean?
Right.
But Ireland has just taken to him. It's astounding.
Right.
And now Britain and now America, but Ireland, he's been huge there for the whole year and a half. So I think there's good support acts, and I think the whole thing is going to be a great weekend. You know.
All depends on the weather, like on those outdoor things.
That's true. That's true too. Yeah, but
it pisses down. It's slightly damp, isn't it?
Hi, Joe Jackson here again. And if you want to read the article that came out of that chat you just heard, check my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com. Also, if you'd like to be notified of shows that focus on hundreds more interviews like the one you just heard, why not subscribe to the Joe Jackson Interviews podcast? Either way, thank you for listening.